Inés Cabral Mecía es magíster en la enseñanza del inglés como lengua extranjera. Es licenciada en inglés, es traductora literaria y técnico-científica, es profesora de inglés y es maestra normal superior. También es regente del Instituto Superior de Formación Docente y Técnica número 33 y profesora de Estudios Interculturales 1, 3 y 4, de Introducción al Inglés con fines académicos, de Fundamentos de la Enseñanza y Aprendizaje del Inglés 1 y de Literatura en Lengua Inglesa y Juventud. Se desempeña a su vez en los niveles secundario y primario. Además, es formadora del área de inglés de la región 21. Bienvenida, Inés, a este espacio virtual.
So, do we mean text design especially for children or read only by them, not those intended for adults or a mixed age audience that we are also used by them? So what is true is that throughout the world, literature for children originated with retelling and adapting the familiar stories of a culture. When English language children's literature emerged as a visible entity, it followed this route with the publication of various fairy or folktale collections and religious texts. Subsequently, the principal domains of retold story expanded to include myths and mythologies, medieval romance, especially tales of King Arthur knights, stories about legendary heroes such as Robin Hood, Oriental tales usually linked with Arabian Nights and modern classics from Shakespeare to Kenneth Rayan with the Wind in the Willows, for instance. Storytelling remains today a powerful and appealing tool, and teachers have always known the power of stories, poems, songs, and chants in the English classroom. Here, it is interesting to remember the advantages of working with literature in all areas of learning, not just the learning of a foreign language. According to Cameron, literature for children, and in particular storytelling, is one of the most natural and effective ways of introducing children to continuous and coherent spoken discourse. From my own experience of working with children after more than 30 years now, stories and books are important for very young children, mainly because they are fun, they are engaging, they are enriching, and they create both joy and meaning. Books promote inquiry, and books and stories engage with the imagination and set their minds running. And that is a wonderful way to start any lesson. They support the development of learning strategies such as listening for general meaning, predicting, guessing, making hypotheses. Stories and text in general contextualize learning. Texts provide an authentic context for learning. Stories frame the themes and the ideas in a concrete way that enables children to discuss and apply their learning in a realistic context. They afford context for repetitive language exposure and use. Children become aware of the rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation of language. They are a source for expansion and for expression of a wide range of emotions. They give an opening for sensitizing children to the needs and feelings of others. They provide a safe way into understanding experiences beyond a child's own experience. It is the narrative in books which enable children to enter the experiences of others and begin to connect with how others feel. They reflect environments and different cultures, offering ideal opportunities for encouraging intercultural understanding. Plus, of course, the fact of listening and then reading allow children to absorb and explore notions of structure, language, and plot. Literature for children invites us to use a variety of materials, resources, and strategies that will appeal to different kinds of learners and will allow us to create an inclusive learning environment. If we provide young children with opportunities, they will learn to love books and stories, and this will open up their world to an ongoing rich source of pleasure. Let's remember that written language in text is not just spoken language written down. It is a different way of using language and has a different function from the everyday. It includes different vocabulary, different patterns and rhythm of language use, rhyme, repetition, and wordplay. Julia Donaldson's books, for instance, are an excellent example of this. This is the Gruffalo, for example, whose eyes are orange, his tongue is black, he has prickles all over his back. So Donaldson's twists and turns in the rhyme and the rhythm of the language are delightful and offer a new and different way for young children to experience and to respond to language. Of course, storytelling needs to be prepared, okay, as carefully as any other activity. And when planning, it is important to bear in mind a set of variables. Let me see if I can share the next slide.
Enter.
Enter. Enter. Not working.
Maybe clicking on the PowerPoint window?
Yes, right. Thank you. Well, so storytelling, as I said, needs to be prepared as carefully as any other activity. And when planning, it is important to bear in mind a set of variables. Okay, well, first of all, the first variable should be the choice of the book, the choice of the text that we want to work with. So, is it matched to the children in the group? Is the subject of the text one that will interest the children? Does it have an engaging storyline? Does it enrich and enhance the children's experience of language, either through the language use or the text or the illustrations that support the text? What kind of prior knowledge might children need to access the text? How effectively is language used, for example? How effectively are images used? See that stories are told not just through language, but through the picture, through images. A second variable that we've considered is the question of preparation. Consider whether the text that we select is better to be read or it is better to be told to the children, or a combination of both. What is important is to read the book through or learn the story well if you are telling it, so that you know it well enough to tell it fluently and dramatically and use any props effectively. The first time we read a text aloud to the class is vital. It is a time to display our storytelling skills and think about, of course, props that you could use to read, tell or retell the story that are engagingly. Puppets, story chairs, storyboards, music, different items that you can use. Before you begin reading, be explicit about what you want the group to do. Do you want them to listen all the way through first, or do you want them to do some kind of activity while listening? So what is that you want the kids to be doing while you are retelling or while you are reading? A third variable that we consider here is the question of the actual reading or telling the story. So tell or read the story enthusiastically. Children will pick up on your enthusiasm. It is important at the moment you choose the story, you choose the literary text that you're going to work with, that not only that text will appeal or appeals to kids, but also you. So you must enjoy reading it. So you must be the first one to be interested and involved in the story you are reading. And when reading, let the children see the book's pages as you read it. If you are reading a story, at points in the story, track your finger along the text. This alerts children to the difference between illustration and writing, and it communicates one of the functions of writing, and it demonstrates left to right tracking in reading and writing. Then read or tell the story all the way through at some point, because this enables children to hear and absorb the narrative arc in stories and allows them to immerse themselves in the story. As fourth variable would be, okay, the follow-up. Okay, what about next? And of course, there are different alternatives. You can talk about similar things that have happened to the kids. You can introduce rhymes, riddles, chants, songs that link with the story. You can provide alternative endings, or you can look more closely to certain events or aspects of the story, or you can retell the story using different props. Well, for the purpose of this webinar, we decided to focus on two stories. The tale of a naughty little rabbit, based on the original tale by Beatrix Potter, and the second, The Ruffalo's Child by Julia Donaldson. Well, the first is a very beautiful story of a naughty little rabbit that becomes quite fat, sneaking under a gate and stumbling into a huge vegetable patch. This story originated from a series of letters written by Beatrix Potter to help cheer up her late governess's son, who was often ill. And these letters, which began in 1893, were tales written after Potter's real-life pet rabbit named Peter. Let me tell you a little anecdote. One day it occurred to Beatrix that her letter to the 5-year-old boy might make a good book. So she borrowed the letter back and copied it out and then wrote and illustrated the story in an exercise book. She sent the manuscript to 6 publishers, you know, but none of them were interested. Undeterred, she self-published, and on the 16th of December 1901, 250 copies of The Tale of Peter Rabbit were printed. The book was so successful that after a short while, further 200 copies were printed. Okay, then what about the second story, that is The Ruffalo's Child? Well, The Ruffalo's Child by Julia Donaldson, the story repeats the brain over Brom theme. The story, written in rhyming language, is about the young Ruffalo who sets off into the woods to find the big bad mouse that her father has told her stories about. Okay, and let's see. Next, okay, well, so considering these two stories, we have tried to think about and we have planned certain activities. We are planning to tell you some ideas in order to work with these stories in 3 different stages. I mean, what to use in order to present the story, to introduce the stories, these stories, for example, what to use while developing the stories, and what to do or plan as a final outcome. Okay, well, good. Now let Jime continue.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's begin with story bags. A story bag is a story sack, sorry. A story sack is a bag with a range of items to support a particular book, yes, a particular story. They story sacks create another dimension to the book. They contain a puppet for the characters, key objects from the story, non-fiction books related to the topics of the story. games to play, etc. So story sacks help bring life to story, help bring stories to life, encourage children to play and explore, yes? And they help children consider the characters and setting as well. If you look at the slide, ready-made resources stand together with homemade items. Yes, for the purpose of giving life to our lessons, we can take advantage of different elements at hand. Yes, for example, a paper bag can be used to make a hand puppet, yes, or cardboard for finger puppet, not to mention wool to make them too. Yes, and in the following slide, we can see, Inés, please, that other alternatives can also be used. For example, recycled clothes, such as gloves, socks, ankle socks, yes, among others. Now, Ivana is going to continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to talk about apron stories and umbrella stories. As you can see on the slide here, they are interactive visual storytelling presentations where children, in the case of the aprons, point to a pocket and the puppet inside comes to life through a story, a verse, or a song. In the apron on the left, for example, the plan is to work with the two stories at the presentation stage. While the pocket could be used to hold the main characters of the story, the washing line above will provide the opportunity for further practice of vocabulary items as the story develops. The apron on the right could be used with more than one aim. For example, to involve children in the actual selection of the story or song by choosing a number or at the final stage when revisiting contents. In the case of the umbrella, for the presentation stage, the idea is to walk around the classroom carrying the umbrella, and as you tell the story, you go on sticking the picture on its face. For reinforcement, the umbrella could be used as a spinner. Children can take turns to describe the face it lands on. Now would come, I think, another, yes, the headbands. Well, this is another resource that we find useful while storytelling. For example, kids can use these headbands to wear and tell the story, to rehearsal a play, for example, and they can make their own headbands, decorate them. And it is very useful to provide an environmental atmosphere to introduce the story by making them, the children, get involved in the story. So they would wear the headbands and automatically they would be involved in the story they are telling or they are listening to. And now it will be Kima's turn again.
Yes. Okay. Recreating the setting. It could be a good skill to return to the linguistic exponent introduced or previously introduced. Yes. What to use to make it? In this case, we made use of a tin box, a magnet, and a copy of the landscape and of the characters. Yes. And how to use it? Children take turns to locate the characters in different places. And then they get ready to play, for example, a yes or no question game. So, is the Gruffalo on the log? Yes, he is. No, he isn't. Is the Gruffalo's child in the cave? Yes, she is. No, she isn't. Yes, and go on. This is one possibility. Then it can be used, for example, for a guessing game, yes, or there are different tasks, yes, to do with it.
Okay, well, it's my turn now again. So what is that we are showing now? Here is an example of what we can call gender transfer. Okay, well, we can consider a set of possibilities. In this case, is from story to drama. Okay, so we can introduce or retell the story making use of the shadow theater. There are different reasons for this, the use of the shadow theater. First of all, you need simple material and tools. Transformation is magical. It is a very old tradition, and its main characteristic is its simplicity. And above all, children love it, and it creates a sense of mystery and suspense. Okay, well, and let's see. Here you have, see, in this one, it is just a lantern, that is just a decoration that you may have at home, okay, where you have taken the footprints there, okay, well, and then you can retell, see what's happening next, who's next, whose footprints are this, okay, well, and you go back and you revisit previous contents. Well, this question of gender transfer, as I said before, offers a series of possibilities, maybe from story to drama, maybe one creative option could be from a story to a note. So children could write a note, for example, taking the other story, taking the story of the rabbit, children can write a note from Mr. McGregor to Peter's mom, complaining about Peter's behavior. Other possibility could be to create a telephone conversation. Okay, so I mean, tired of what is happening in his garden, he decides to call the woman, that is Peter's mom. Okay, well, and talk about the same topic. Or what about being McGregor for a while? What about being McGregor for a while and decide to write a page in his own diary? He has to express his feelings. He has to show what he's feeling at the moment with this situation. Okay, well, so we can work with the prose paragraph writing and describing what Peter does in McGregor's garden. Okay, and let's see. Okay, well, what about this one? Well, you can see there is McGregor's garden. So children can either work with maps. I don't know if you can see the map there it's on the left, at the back. It says children can either work with maps, making maps of the garden, in this case, for example, help children to engage more deeply in the story. Children can draw on the map based on the descriptions provided by the story. They can engage more deeply with the plot, of course, and absorb more successfully the essential details of the story. Children can listen and mark Peter Rabbit's route through the garden on the map, and they can even glue pictures of the different vegetables and animals he encounters on the way. Children can even design their gardens following descriptions provided. So like a kind of reading comprehension practice, and they can even design their own gardens and then they describe them orally or in a written form. They describe how they have distributed the seeds, for example. Or children can also make a model. Models help kids, mainly the little ones, help kids to visualize and picture the scene in their minds. Children can listen to the story and place the different vegetables, place the different vegetables in the corresponding location. The teacher can check whether they can understand, the telling of the story or the description that the teacher is making about McGregor's garden, and well, check whether, okay, well, my kids are learning, my kids have understood the use of prepositions, for example. Okay, so, and they can also track Peter's moves in the garden, going forward, backwards, going to where the carrots are, getting to the pool, meeting the cat. Okay, well, and if we think about a sunny garden, in a sunny garden, many things happen. A sunny garden hums, buzzes, creeps and crawls with life. And it could be a good idea to build a small garden in an area at school. Children would have to carry some research first in order to know what vegetables are in season first, and then they will have to follow the teacher's directions and indications to dig a row, drop some seeds and watch them grow. And they will see that while peppers grow up, potatoes grow down, and pumpkin vines around and around. And they can report on how, for example, the daily spray of water has helped the growth of the plant. They will also be able to identify different kinds of bugs and insects that live in the garden. Okay, so they will be working with natural science too. Okay, and of course, about all the noises that happen in the garden, we are going to be talking about that in a while. Now it's Ivana's turn. Okay, sorry. First we have something else here. Okay, as regards plant and flower puzzles, two different types of tasks and activities that kids can do. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, Ivana.
Yes. Yes. The idea of this slide is to ask us the question, why should we use games when we are talking about or we are dealing with literature for kids? And we have been thinking a lot, and these are the conclusions we have reached. For example, games are often familiar to children. They may have already known this game and the same rules in L1, so that it would be very easy for them to play it in English. Games also provide a natural and meaningful context for using English. They are also very useful for supporting language development. They are motivating. They involve luck, chance, not just proficiency in English. And so it generates hope, sometimes fear, and excitement. They are also social activities. They can involve group and pair work and often involve collaboration. They develop a child's cognitive skills, like, for example, concentration, memorizing, sequencing, comparing, and counting. So some games and game-like activities develop fine and gross motor skills. In the case of the tic-tac-toe here on this slide, this game helps to improve hand-eye coordination. It's a collaborative game in which children need to apply their logic and form a strategy. Children can play with other children or with adults. Once again, we have used a variety of raw materials for the production of the resources.
Okay, well, in order to encourage children to build or create stories, we can use cubes, for example. Yes, children work with the structure of the stories, I mean, the beginning, the middle, and the ending. And they play in groups of 3, for example. One child has the B cube, the M cube, and one has the D cube, yes? Each child rolls a cube and describe the parts of the story they have rolled. Of course, following an order, I mean, starting with the child that has the B cube, yes, that stands for beginning. So children match the story pictures from each cube, and they may have a very silly story or a perfect one, but everything is possible, yes? Then other alternative could be the use of jars, yes? Story jars, or also called who, what, or where jars. In each jar, children will find little objects or small pieces of papers with something written on them. By taking one small piece of paper from every jar, children will be able to start creating stories. Yes, and it is magic. Yes.
Hello.
Okay, well, it's my turn again. So what we can see there is the nature walk, okay? Well, and the possibility that children can become nature detectives in an outing in which they could be organized, for example, let's say info groups, okay? And each group would be in charge of doing something different in this outing.
No tires mucha agua, Kiari.
Sorry. Well, those in charge of a scavenger hunt, for example, the ones in charge of the leaf or seed collection, a third group responsible for the bark leaf rubbing, and finally the fourth group who could collect blackberries for the crumble. A scavenger hunt, it's a game in which players have to find various objects, and it is for all ages. Everybody can do it. It is an exciting way to make children explore the natural world. There are different types, of course. Maybe the texture scavenger hunt, where children try to find objects with different surface, okay? Or maybe the color scavenger jam, so they that they can find different colors. The tiny elements scavenger hunt, where they have to find tiny elements that can fit into, for example, a matchbox. Or the one that we have discussed and we have thought about to share with you is the bag scavenger hunt, where they would have to report on different findings. For example, what animals they could see, what insects they could see, bees, butterflies, spiders, toads, bumblebees, ladybirds, okay, beetles, what? And then later on try to transform the information to an Excel document, for example, to make a pie chart, integrating different subjects in that way, integrating English, natural science, math, and computer technology. Okay, here you have, for example, what can be given to kids in order to, in order to report what they find as regards the different types of insects and bugs. Okay, well, good. Ivana?
Well, in the part of integrating art into these activities, we have thought about leaf and bark rubbing. In the case of leaf and bark rubbing, children responsible for it will have some large sheets of paper and crayons. And they would have to place the pieces of white paper against a tree trunk, against the bark, and they would have to rub the crayon until the pattern of the bark is visible on the paper. It can be done on different trees and also with different leaves. Children could also draw the insects they found on the tree. So in this example on the slide, you see a leaf rubbing and a drawing of a little tiny caterpillar.
Well, children can also make blackberry or apple crumble. And then they can eat it during the preparation for the art exhibition, for example. Yes. So they can speculate, for example, children can speculate on the ingredients and the cooking tools they need for making it, for making the crumble. Yes. And then they read or follow the recipe, yes, in order to make the crumble, of course, with the teacher's help. This could be another possibility. And here we can see an example of the art exhibition, where children can use leaves, different leaves or seeds they collected during the outing. Yes, sorry.
Yes, okay, yes, during the leaves and the seeds they collected during the outing. And sorry, we have to tell everyone, but we haven't prepared. We didn't have time to prepare the crumble, really, in order to take a photo and share with them. Okay, well, so we have thought about millions and millions of different ideas, to tell you the truth, that we can share with you. And I mean, one of the ideas that emerged was the idea of creating a literature portfolio. I mean, mainly for those that are on the way to become teachers. I mean, that they are preparing and that they are attending the different subjects at the institute. And you are starting in this profession. Okay, so the creation of a literature portfolio is wonderful. That is, first of all, you have to look at charts of best-selling children's books and choose some that you haven't read, and make brief notes, for example, with comments on the following. For example, age groups which might enjoy the book, how the book might be linked to work across the curriculum. Also consider other books that might someone who enjoyed the book like to read after reading or working with that one. Okay, and then which poems or chants or songs we can add to that story, how we can make some kind of interventions in the text. How can we take a character from one story and make the character present the character of the next story that we are going to be working with? Okay, so other possibility is, if you are just to start with the work with short stories for children, could be to start, for example, with narrative poems, to take narrative poems as a starting point for stories. Okay, we have thought too that, I mean, a good idea is to draw or paint pictures of key events or characters in the stories or the poems. Okay, and then, if you like to work with if you like doing some kind of craft work, okay, of course it's really interesting to work with, for example, vegetable printing. So you take sweet potatoes and ready mixed paint, and you start working with them with the different productions, and then making this kind of final outcome as an art exhibition. Okay, children also love, for example, making masks. Okay, so you would have to provide the art material for children to make face masks for different animals in the stories, or for a new character that you can add to the story. Okay, what about being you in the story? If you were part of the story, if you were one more character in the story, who would you be? Or what would you be like? Okay, where would you start? Where would you appear in the story? And okay, following the idea of these two stories, we have also thought about, for example, role play situations that take place, for example, at the market. We have these products in our garden, and now we want to sell them. Okay, so we can have this role play food market with real fruit and real vegetables. Okay, well, and so this would be all for now. And okay, so Estela, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
That's the end of your presentation, Inés?
Okay, so that would be
you
okay.
You can stop sharing.
I stop share. Okay. Well, wait. Thank you. First of all, thank you. First of all, and
a creative thank you.
Okay. Good.
Well, we are so pleased for so many ideas and creativity. Then, of course, I'm going to congratulate you on your job privately, but I wanted to do it here in front of the rest. And what I want to highlight, what I want to highlight is that the three of them, Inés, Jimena, and Ivana, prepared most of these things, especially for this webinar. Not only did they create and think from the very beginning from scratch, as Inés said, okay, let's start from the beginning, but also they chose these two stories that I hope you have been able to watch them before with the links we sent you. If not, we can share them again now in the chat. But all the material was especially prepared with a lot of responsibility and, well, actually to share it with you. I hope you have profited from it. People, I don't know if you would like to do any questions, to make any questions, to pose any questions for the teachers, the teacher and the would-be teachers.
I don't have any questions, but I want to again congratulate the teachers for this job and for the lovely ideas. They are very useful, really.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I must tell you that they use them. I don't know Ivana or Jimena, but Inés uses this material with her students in a regular school, en una escuela común y corriente primaria, and with her students too. But we are really delighted. Very, very nice ideas, girls. People, any other question that you would like to pose? No questions? Inés, what is the question for Inés and for, sorry, Coti, you were going to ask.
I see many of my students here, and I would like to tell them, yes, because we have been working with literature, yes, and these books, yes, even picture books can be used in class. And I saw in one of the pictures that you also had Pete the Cat. Yes, so that is it is another series of books which is very interesting to work with students, yes, especially with very young learners. So the idea of using kids' books, it's not only just storytelling, which is wonderful the way, but I think that all of your ideas are great to exploit other things from these books, yes, because you can teach colors, you can teach food, you can teach lots of things. So even if you are working in regular schools, when you have very little time, yes, these books can be used to reinforce vocabulary or these other things.
Yes, in fact, for example, in the case of Peter the Cat, I normally use it as my puppet. I mean, as the puppet that is as my friend, my partner. That is the character I have. I go to school, I introduce the first story, and the one is in charge of presenting the other characters and introducing the other characters of the series of books that we deal with at school, at the primary school.
Somebody's asking for the recipe of the blackberry crumble. Okay,
okay.
It's going to be holistic. It's going to be holistic. And something practical that Inés does is at the very beginning of the year, she creates a booklet, and every single student has his or her own booklet. So it's not that the photocopies are fooling around or books are very expensive, perhaps for them. So since they have their own booklet with the cover and everything is there. And as Inés said, the lessons are planned from the beginning. Everything is planned. It's not just a matter of arriving at the classroom and, okay, improvising. That's impossible. That's rather difficult. I wouldn't suggest that. Yes, because it's, well, you have a bunch of monsters there trying to learn something.
Okay, and what is important too is, for example, when we share with you the ideas of the games and all that, is that, I mean, it's not that you have to have plenty of things. I mean, I usually work, for example, with seasons. I have decided to call it that way. So, for example, I work with the story, I work with the literary text, and then it takes a moment when I divide the class and it says, well, we have 4 groups and we have the 4 seasons. And the 4 seasons, like the season of the year, the 4 seasons are going to be dealing with different tasks, different games, different activities connected to the same story. So, I mean, if we have prepared, if there is, you have seen there, I mean, that is a lacing cars. If there are lacing cars, we have been dealing with, I don't know, any of the stories, like maybe Graphalos or the Graphalos Child, or Peter Rabbit, or any other of the stories that you can work with. Then to prepare, I mean, all this, as Jimena introduced at the beginning, all this story sack with material that helps, is going to help at the moment that you work with these different seasons. So while this group is dealing with this domino in which they have to and revisit and remember vocabulary, these are the group at the same time are dealing with I don't know, a tic-tac-toe maybe related to the same, okay, and they have some minutes, and then you can work with any kind of clock, for example, to consider, well, 10 minutes for this, 10 minutes is over, so we change, okay, and so everybody can be playing with the different games. Okay, Stella, thank you. You are sharing there the naughty rabbit. Good.
Inés, what about the students' reactions? How do the students feel it? I mean, learning a foreign language in this way.
Well, what I tell you is that what is interesting is that they are always curious, because they always know that I go with my rucksack with books, and then I also take my bag. That bag, that could be any bag that I call the surprise bag, and there is always something different in that bag for every class. Anything, okay? And what really calls the attention is the use of unusual material. Yes, as I think Jime or Ivana mentioned, the use of a sock. I mean, a sock. You see that we keep on losing socks. Yes, we have the pair too, but we always find one. We don't know what to do. Okay, well, so I mean, don't throw it away. Use it, take it, make a puppet with that, and they are going to have lots of fun. But not only the ones that are 6-year-olds or 5-year-olds have fun, also the ones that are 9 and the ones that are 10. Okay, the ones that are 11, you have to get to know your kids, of course, as I said first, what could be suitable for them, what could be really nice for them to work with, and what is, it's not going to have the same reaction. But in general, they are always curious when I enter with the bag, because there is always there. What is that you have there? And for example, I never show a character the whole body. I usually show the tail. It's just the tail that is peeping out from the bag. And so what's that is peeping out? Okay, yes, the tail or foot. Okay, an ear, maybe sometimes. Okay, and so maybe a meerkat. Okay, maybe just an elephant. Maybe the sock that is made into a puppet. Okay, yes. So, and that is really, that calls the attention. Okay.
So one more question. How do you go about it? I mean, do you use a course book plus these stories? Do you use only the stories? How many stories do you use do you cover per year?
I mean, working in the primary school, I work in 2 state schools, 2 primary schools. I have 4th. I have been having 4th for many years. A certain time I have even also 5th and 6th, but now I don't know for how many years I have been teaching only in 4th. And I work with stories, and usually I work with 5 or 6 stories during the year, starting in April up to November, up to the end of November. And what I try to do is, of course, select the stories, try to find a thread, a thread that is a kind of link between one story and the other. What is that makes these stories, that can connect these stories? And then what I do is what I have said. I try to add to that story songs, rhymes, and all that. For example, I mean, we mentioned Pete the cat. Well, Pete the cat, you have songs in the story. I mean, Pete the cat and his shoes. Okay, Pete the cat is one of the stories that I use. Okay, in the schools where I work, there are 2 different schools, and they are very different. Okay, we have different types of kids in the sense that they are at different stages in their learning of the mother tongue. Okay, and for example, Pete the cat is a story that is perfect to work with the courses. I mean, it's not just story for the very, very little ones. Okay, it all depends on the type of tasks you plan with your kids to do, more than in the story itself. So you can work with the story at different levels with different courses. Okay, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Then, of course, I add to that, as I said, rhymes, or the fact that one character from one story tells a song or sends a letter to the character or the other, or an email. For example, we are
this sounds as
chat.
English for communicative purposes. I think pretty similar to that. Well, I think that it's been more than enough. If somebody else would like to ask something else. Yes, no? Okay.
Hello.
Well, yes.
Sorry. This is a kind of personal question. How do you organize your books? Do you organize with the vocabulary? How do you organize them?
I mean, first of all, I try to see, as I said before, I try to see what about the best-selling children's books. I mean, just this first. I mean, I said, well, so what is that? So, I mean, what I try to say, well, what is that has been published? I try to follow the writers like Julia Donaldson, okay, and her books to see what is that she's publishing. I try to, first of all, do that, okay? Then I read. Of course, I read. I try to see how much I can take from that book. That book could be useful in what way? Is that, I mean, as I said before, in the case of the choice of the material, I mean, does the book, is it, how effectively is language used? What is that book going to let me introduce? I mean, with that book, am I going to be able to talk about the family, for example, to talk about what they like and they don't like? I mean, am I going to be able to talk about their neighborhood where they live? So these are the things I take into account. Okay, so and then of course in all these books and stories, okay, of course you have a moral, there is a teaching. And that's why I really love literature for children, because it is more than the words that you teach, more than vocabulary connected to different areas, but it is also the message or the moral, the teaching that these books leave. I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sort of wearing different hats, not perhaps thinking of, am I going to teach vocabulary or am I going to teach present continuous? It's I have to teach something different. If
Yeah.
not, the ideas of that our colleagues have shared do not arise.
Yes, that's it.
And sorry,
Yes.
Inés, and the idea of teaching English as a whole, not as vocabulary or as grammar. You're teaching the whole language. So, for example, you tell a story that the children understand the story by many other things, like miming and by having fun with a game, or by singing the song or the rhyme in the story. So they start using the language in a different way, and then when you give them, I suppose, the next book, the next story that has a link, they understand it much better because they already know all the linguistic exponents. This is what Inés has taught us in class.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
Well,
I don't know
yes.
if Grace is somewhere here. Grace, I think she had a meeting now. But if Inés,
yes,
here,
I am here. I am here, but under a different name. You see that?
Yes, in
this
disguise.
is not me. I am not Coti Lasati, but thank you, Coti, for letting us use your Zoom account. Okay. No, I just wanted to, well, thank Inés and her two students. It was wonderful to hear you today. We've, got lots of interesting ideas, creative ways in which we can work with kids, with literature in the classroom. So I think, well, it's been a really very nice, lovely experience to have you here today. Thank you very much. And thank you as well to all the people who have, been here today. Just remember that next week we'll be having our third webinar. Stella, you want to introduce it?
Yes, the third webinar has to do with the connection between art and English. And it is precisely going to be delivered by a teacher of English who is also a teacher of art. So you will see how creative ideas that she has, and how she plans her lessons, and how she spots artists, contemporary artists from all over, especially Latin America. And she deals with, I wouldn't say perhaps with children, or at least I haven't seen much in connection to children. I've seen her perhaps in connection to teaching English to teenagers and adults. But well, we'll see. She has to surprise us. Perhaps second-year students already know her. She's Sole Afra. So, and she's really great. She's really great. But well, we are used to inviting great teachers. ¿Qué le va a hacer? No? Well,
before we finish the meeting, remember that we have, Bernardina has shared the link to download the certificates for attendance, all right, which you will be able then to complete. Okay, do so before we finish with the meeting today, please. Thank you again very
much. Hope to see you all next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Inés. Thank you.
Thank
people,
you.
for being here.
Thank you very much, people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, people.
Thank you.